સુખમાં સમરો દુઃખમાં સમરો સમરો દિવસ નિરાત જીવતા સમરો મરતા સમરો સમરો સૌ સંગાત સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર યોગી સમરે ભોગી સમરે સમરે રાજા રંગ દેવો સમરે દાનવ સમરે સમરે સૌની શંક સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર અડસત અક્ષર એ ના જાણો અડસત તીરથ સાર 8 સંપદાથી પરમાણો અડસિદ્ધિ દાતાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર નવપદ એના નવનિધ આપે ભવ ભવના દુઃખ કાપે વીર વચનથી હૃદય વ્યાપે પરમતમ પદ આપે સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર એના મહિમાનો નહીં પાર એનો અર્થ અનંત અપાર એના મહિમાનો નહીં પાર એનો અર્થ અનંત અપાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર સમરો મંત્ર ભલો નવકાર એ છે 14 પુરવનો સાર
પ્રણામ. જય જિનેન્દ્ર બધાને. Okay, let's start. I'm just going to start sharing some slides. Second. Okay. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the pratna. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Airiyanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loye Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro, Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarusura Surendra Mahito Viramuda Sansrita Virena Bhiyata Swakarma Nichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Prautamatulam Virashighoram Tapo Vire Sri Truti Kirti Kanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disav Anguthe Amrutavase Laptitana Bhandar Sri Guru Gautam Samariye Manavanchita Faladatar. The topic that we are going to discuss today is will be quite interesting for everybody. There is a particular story that I've selected to illustrate this. Some of the things that we have talked about have been introduced before, but we are going into a bit more depth of this particular topic, that is the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak. Some of you may have heard this story elsewhere, but this story is important and relevant at many different levels. And in many ways, it informs us about how some practices in the world got propagated, particularly with relevance to some of the things in animal sacrifice and what was the sort of the origin of that practices. So let's move on. As always, we are talking about the process and outcome of the knowledge that we gain. And I would urge you to listen, reflect, debate within your own mind and with others, and question, internalize your learning, and we all should try and incorporate this, all the learning in our lives. Now, this particular story has been taken from Updesh Prasad, which is a very beautiful text, and I'm giving you some details about that in a minute. But this story is also found in other Jain texts, and I suspect that you may find some reference to this in the Vedas as well. Now, Updesh Prasad is a very interesting book. It's very beautifully written. The Gujarati translation that I read off and on, which I'm sure some of you may have come across in the past, is about 5 or 6 parts. It is constructed as a granth or a huge text in Sanskrit, and it's got 24 pillars. Each pillar has 15 parts. So in total, there are 360 discourses. And the way it is set out, if you read just one discourse a day, this whole book gives you a full flavor of all aspects of Jain Dharma and everything that is important in it. And almost every part of it is illustrated by one or two or more stories that are relevant to the subject matter that is being discussed. And also, the Acharya Maharaj Sri Vijay Lakshmi Suriswaji, who wrote this, I'm not sure exactly when. I've tried to find out, and I've asked somebody who may know this question, and he's going to get back to me after having a discussion with an Acharya Maharaj in India. And I'll hopefully be able to inform you of some more details about the author of this particular text. But Vijay, Param Pujya Acharya Vijay Lakshmi Suriswarji Maharaj has written this Sanskrit text, and the Gujarati translation that I've been reading has been around for many years, and it is been translated by a very able scholar, Kaurjibai, Anandjibai, and it's something that those of you who may who are comfortable with reading Gujarati may find very interesting. I'm not aware of any English translation, but it's possible that there does exist one. Now, this particular story is from the discourses on the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak, that is a householder. And the same story is given in a bit more detail in the Jain Ramayana section of Trisashti Shalaka Purush Charitra, and another part, another text where the Jain Ramayana is discussed, the Padma Puran. The story is also given there. Just as a reminder to people, the 12 vows of a Jain householder or Jain Shravak that we, I think, have talked about before, they divided into 5 anuvrats, 3 gunvrats, and 4 sikshavrats. The name of the 5 anuvrats, I'll mention the Gujarati words because they are more sort of descriptive and make it clearer. The first one is Thul Pranatipat Virman Vrat. Pranatipat, the word means to destroy life or to hurt other life forms. And when it says it's sthul, meaning it is not very refined, it's not the same as the vow of Jain monk, which is called a Mahavrat. These vows are called anuvrats. Anu means like atoms, like they are very minuscule in comparison with the vows of a Jain monk. So all the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak are anuvrats. So the first anuvrat is Thul Pranatipat Virman Vrat, meaning you take a vow to avoid harm to living beings in ways in which you can avoid that, and be careful with harming life that you can see as life, which is moving about, which is not being of any harm to you. So the exact wording is Sthul Pranatipat Virman Vrat is about Nirapradhi Tras Jivne Marwani Buddhiye Marvu Nahi, meaning any tras jeev that you can see as moving, Nirapradhi, any life that has not actually caused you any harm, Marwani Buddhiye, meaning deliberately. So the vow is quite limited in that respect, but obviously the core element of the sentiment behind it is compassion, daya, care for all life. But in terms of restriction, the major things are restricted, but the other things are to be avoided as much as possible. The second vow is Sthul Musavad Virman Vrat. Musavad is saying untruth, avoid speaking untruth. The third vow is Sthul Adatadan Virman Vrat, meaning avoid stealing. And here again, there are both with the second and the third vow, there are restrictions on the major things that could cause major harm to other living beings. They are not in comparison with the vows of a Jain monk as minuscule in terms of strictness. The fourth vow is Swadara Santosh Par Stri Gaman Virman Vrat, meaning being satisfied for your sexual desires with the spouse or spouses that you are married or living with, and being sort of celibate to a limited extent in that respect. And the fifth vow is Parigraha Parimanvrat. The fourth vow of a Jain monk is Brahmacharya, meaning complete abstinence. And the fifth vow is Aparigraha, meaning complete non-possessiveness. Whereas for a Shravak, the fifth vow is limiting your possessions. That is Parigraha Parimanvrat, you set a limit. I'm going to stop accumulating money after I've got £1 million in my bank accounts, or all my total property is worth £5 million, or whatever you decide. And people take this kind of vow with all seriousness. And no matter what the limit, it is still a limit and it is important. That is what this vow is teaching us. This story that we are going to talk about is regarding the second vow, Sthul Mushavad Virmanvrat, that is the second Anuvrat or vow. This is a story of Parvat, Vasu and Narad. A lot of you who may have read Ramayana would know about Narad Muni. And this is a story of a particular incident in his life. The story has a few parts and a few sections. We will discuss the main part today, but the more detailed version with associated stories will be done next week. But if you have time, we'll start introducing some of them today. Now, there is a short video that I think may be quite useful to watch. It's written for children, but it may be quite useful for everybody to see this. So I'm going to try and play this and share that with you. I hope I can. Otherwise, the link is there and you can all watch. It is a limited version of this story, and it's got some slight differences between what is given in this text that I'm reading and from the other text in Trisasya Shalaka Purush Charitra and Padma Puran. So let me try. I'm going to stop sharing this for the moment, and let me see if I can share the video with you.
जय जिनेन बच्चों, हम आज
Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to set this up. Okay. Can you all say it?
Yes, we can say it.
Yeah. Can you hear?
जाने जाते थे, लेकिन उन्होंने
Let me just restart. Okay.
यजमान बच्चों, हम आज राजा वसु की कहानी सुनेंगे, जो सच बोलने के लिए जाने जाते थे, लेकिन उन्होंने एक ऐसा काम किया जिसकी वजह से वो 7वें नरक में चले गए। बहुत पुरानी बात है। अयोध्या में राजा आयाति राज्य करते थे। राजा और रानी का एक पुत्र था, राजकुमार वसु। जब राजकुमार वसु पढ़ने लायक हुए, तब राजा ने उन्हें क्षीर कदम ब्राह्मण के पास पढ़ने के लिए भेजा। राजा और रानी ने आपस में बात करी और क्षीर कदम ब्राह्मण को बुलाया। राजा ने वसु से कहा, पुत्र, हम तुम्हें पढ़ने के लिए आश्रम भेजना चाहते हैं। वसु बोले, जो आज्ञा पिताजी। फिर राजकुमार गुरुजी के साथ चल दिए। आश्रम में ब्राह्मण की पत्नी स्वस्ति में थी और उनका पुत्र पर्वत रहता था। पर्वत पापी और कम बुद्धि वाला था। गुरुजी ने पुत्र से बोला, पर्वत आओ, तुम्हें 2 नए शिष्यों से मिलवाता हूँ। ये है राजकुमार वसु और ये है नारद ब्राह्मण। नारद बहुत समझदार और धार्मिक ब्राह्मण थे। गुरुजी ने उन तीनों को बहुत सारे ग्रंथ पढ़ाए, बहुत अच्छी शिक्षा दी। एक बार गुरुजी अपने तीनों शिष्यों के साथ घूमने निकले थे। वहां उन्होंने एक मुनि महाराज को देखा। मुनि महाराज से मिलकर गुरुजी को वैराग्य हो गया और तभी उन्होंने मुनि महाराज के पास दीक्षा ले ली। तीनों शिष्य आश्रम वापस आ गए। उनके वापस पहुंचते ही गुरु माता स्वस्तिमती ने पर्वत से पूछा, गुरुजी कहाँ हैं? वो क्यों नहीं आए? तुम लोग अकेले कैसे आ गए? तब पर्वत ने उन्हें सारी बात बताई। गुरु माता बहुत दुखी हो गई और रोकर बोलने लगी, उनकी बुद्धि खराब हो गई थी क्या, जो दीक्षा ले ली? फिर नारद ने उन्हें समझाया, गुरु माता परेशान क्यों हो रहे हो? ये तो खुशी की बात है। गुरुजी ने आत्म कल्याण के लिए दीक्षा ली है। वो धर्मात्मा है। दिन बीतने लगे। जब राजा आयाति ने गुरुजी की दीक्षा के बारे में सुना, तो उन्हें भी दीक्षा लेने का मन हुआ। फिर वो वसु को राजा बनाकर खुद दीक्षा ले ली। पर्वत अपने पिता की तरह शिष्य को शिक्षा देने लगा। ऐसे ही उसका गुजारा चलता था। उधर नारद मुनि देश विदेश में भ्रमण करके धर्म का प्रचार करने लगे। एक दिन की बात है, नारद मुनि घूमते घूमते पर्वत के पास पहुंचे। नारद मुनि बोले, कैसे हो पर्वत? तो पर्वत बोले, बस भाई, ऐसे ही गुजारा चल रहा है। मैं शिष्यों को पढ़ाता हूँ। आज मैं उन्हें अजैर्य स्तव्यम के बारे में बताऊंगा कि अज का मतलब होता है बकरा, और हम यज्ञ में बकरे की बलि देते हैं। तभी नारद मुनि बोले, अरे अरे पर्वत, क्या कह रहे हो? अज का मतलब बकरा नहीं है। अज तो पुराने चावल को कहते हैं, जिससे धान नहीं उगता। तुम्हारा दिमाग खराब है। जानवर की बलि देकर भी कोई धर्म होता है? तुम भूल गए गुरुजी ने हमें क्या सिखाया था? तब पर्वत तुमसे लड़ने लगा। नारद, मुझे मत सिखाओ, मैं सही कह रहा हूँ। चलो हम दोनों राजा वसु से पूछते हैं। वो तो सच ही बोलेंगे ना। जिसकी बात गलत हुई उसकी जीभ काटी जाएगी। फिर नारद ने बोला, हाँ हाँ, कल सुबह ही चलेंगे। जब पर्वत घर वापस आया, उसने ही सारी बात अपनी माँ को बताई। माँ गुस्से में बोलने लगी, पर्वत, तुम्हारी बुद्धि तो है ही नहीं। हिंसा करके कोई धर्म नहीं होता। मुझे अच्छी तरह याद है, तुम्हारे पिता ने बताया था, अज का मतलब पुराने चावल होते हैं। तुम मत जाना कल, नहीं तो तुम्हारी जीभ काटी जाएगी। पर्वत के जाने के बाद माँ सोचने लगी, एक तो मेरा पति दीक्षा लेकर चला गया है और अब मेरा बेटा जीभ कटवाने जा रहा है। हे भगवान, मैं क्या करूं? मुझे ही कुछ सोचना पड़ेगा। फिर अगले दिन नारद और पर्वत के पहुंचने से पहले ही गुरु माता राजा वसु के पास पहुंच गई और कहने लगी, बेटा वसु, मैं तुम्हारी गुरु माता हूँ। तुम मुझे गुरु दक्षिणा नहीं दोगे? मेरा एक काम करोगे? जब नारद और पर्वत तुमसे मिलने आएंगे, तो जब पर्वत कुछ भी कहे, चाहे झूठी कहे, उसे सच बताना। राजा वसु ने गुरु माता की बात मान ली और बोले, आप मेरी गुरु माता हैं, इसीलिए मैं आपके झूठ को भी सच बोल दूंगा। फिर बाद में नारद और पर्वत वहां पहुंचे। पर्वत बोला, मैं कह रहा हूँ कि अज का मतलब बकरा होता है। नारद कह रहे कि अज का मतलब पुराने चावल होते हैं। राजा वसु, अब तुम ही बताओ कि यज्ञ में बकरे की बलि देते हैं या पुराने चावल चढ़ाते हैं? राजा वसु ने बोला, पर्वत, तुम सही कह रहे हो, बकरे की बलि ही देते हैं। राजा वसु ऐसे कहते ही बिजली चमकने लगी, बादल गरजने लगे और उसके सिंहासन का पाया टूट गया। नारद ने बोला, राजा वसु, तुम पाप को बढ़ावा दे रहे हो, ये बिल्कुल ठीक नहीं है। अभी वक्त है, सच बोल दो। लेकिन राजकुमार वसु ने उसकी नहीं सुनी और उसने फिर से पर्वत का ही साथ दिया। फिर क्या था, बिजली चमकने लगी, धरती फट गई और राजा वसु अपने सिंहासन के साथ पाताल में चले गए। राजा वसु सातवें नरक में पहुंच गए और सारी प्रजा को उनकी असलियत पता चल गई। सबने नारद मुनि की जय जय करी। तो बच्चों, ये थी राजा वसु की कहानी। Hi kids, thank you for watching. Please click on subscribe button for more videos.
Okay, hope you found that interesting. Now let's go through that story again. I hope you all understood the simple Hindi that this was recited in. If anybody has found that difficult and has some questions, please put them through to the admin team, Mira and Kavit, and we'll try and answer them towards the end. Okay. Now I'm going to start the screen share again with the slides. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to put any more slides with this story, but we'll just go through the details of this and I'll recite this again. There was once Upadhyay, or a great teacher, called Shir Kandap. Sorry, Shir Kadambak, who was teaching in his ashram, and he had a son called Parvat. The king in the nearest kingdom had a son called Vasu, and when he was old enough to be educated, he is sent to this ashram of Upadhyay Kshir Kadambak, and on the day that he arrives, also a new student called Narad, who is the son of a Brahmin, comes along, and the Upadhyay begins their education along with the education of his son. And the three of them are living here and become quite friendly with each other and are learning a lot about all different kinds of things that used to be taught in the ashrams at that time. Once, according to this other version of the story, uh, two munis were flying in the sky in this forest, and they uh, are watching the three students uh, studying along with their Upadhyay Kshirkadambak. And one is talking to the other and says that out of these three people, two are going to Narak when they die, and one is going to Swarg. And the Guru heard this and was thinking that I need to know which of my three students are actually not worthy of further teaching. And if they are going to Narak, then I need to really find out. So he devises a test to understand what is actually going on within the students' minds, and then what is their state of their own personal sort of virtue. So one day he sets a test for all three of them. He gives them uh, a sculpture of a chicken or a cock and tells them, each one of them is given a sculpture and says, I would like you to go to the jungle in a place which is completely hidden and where nobody can see you, and destroy or kill this particular cock. Each one is given one chicken or cock and told to go into the forest to a place where nobody can see them and to kill that particular cock, even though it was a pretend kill. Now, two of the students find a secluded place and do what the Guru has told them. Narad goes along and begins to think that it cannot be right that the Guru is telling us to kill this cock. And if he's telling us to do it where nobody can see our deed, then there cannot be any place where the Keval Gnanis or Tirthankar Bhagwan or those in moksha cannot see, because they are all seeing and are aware of everything that's going on in the universe at every moment. And I can see what I'm doing, and this cock can see what I'm doing. So this can only be a simple test. So the answer to this particular test is that I do not do anything. And he comes back with the cock in his hands, and the Upadhyay interviews all three of them when they come back, and he knows the other two have done what he had asked them to do. And Narad is coming back with the sculpture intact, and he says, you did not do what I asked you to do. And Narad says, well, I did actually do exactly what you asked me to do. Think about it, because there is no place where I can do this deed without somebody seeing me. And the Upadhyay Shirkadambak now understands that Narad is the only one who is likely, who will be going to Swarg or to Devlok, and the other two are definitely going to Narak. So both these two Charan Munis. The flying Munis are called Charan Munis. They have the ability or the power to fly. That's why they are called Charan Munis. What they were saying was true. Then what is the point in me carrying on the education of these two students when they are not going to make use of that to better their lives or better the lives of other people? So he becomes quite disheartened with his whole task and decides to give up life as a teacher and becomes a monk. And that is that part of the story which we've heard slightly differently in the video version that we just saw. So when that happens, both Vasu and Narad go back to their respective places. Narad roams around all places, instructing people and getting involved with all kinds of people and politics that you may know about when you read the Ramayana. Vasu goes back to the palace, and when his dad hears about the fact that the Upadhyay has become a monk, he also decides to become a monk and gives the throne up to Vasu. So Vasu becomes the king. And Parvat, the son of the Upadhyay, takes over the teaching duties, and he has other students, and he carries on with the teaching and lives with his mother. Many years go by, and once when Narad is going about from place to place, he comes back to the old ashram and meets up with Parvat. And after initial greeting, they begin to talk, and Parvat tells him that I am today teaching my students the meaning of this particular vakya that our teacher taught us. It's called, to progress and to do good deeds, you have to sacrifice aj in a fire. And as you know, aj means a bakro. Bakro is a goat. And that is what I'm going to be teaching my students, that you do a yagna and sacrifice a goat. So Narad says, you are completely wrong there. The word aj actually means old rice, which is not going to grow back into a rice plant. And that is what aj means. So the sacrifice is for old rice grains, which are not going to be growing again. Aj does not mean a bakro or a goat. It is it's completely different. And Parvat says, no, you are wrong, I am right. And we will go to the king to get justice, and for him, because he was present when we were being taught, and he can decide, and whoever is wrong will have his tongue cut off by the king. So Narad is clear and confident about the principles of what he has learned, and he says, absolutely, let's go to the king tomorrow, King Vasu. Now, when Parvat goes back home and recites this incident to his mother is quite aghast and worried that, Parvat, you are absolutely wrong. I am aware that what your father was teaching all of you meant that aj is actually old rice grains which will not grow again, and aj does not mean a goat or a bakro at all, and he would never teach you about sacrificing animals as any kind of a ritual or anything that would actually earn you punya, because hinsa in itself is completely wrong. So you are wrong, and Narad is right. He's told you the right thing. But Parvat does not particularly listen to her, even though he may have worried. He has obviously said this, and he is not in the mood to apologize or to reflect on what may be wrong. And he decides to go ahead, and his pride won't let him think again about what he has resolved in his mind is the truth. Even though he may know that it is not the truth, he is not going to go back and uh, accept that. And his mother starts worrying that if my son goes to the king tomorrow and the king agrees with Narad, because that is the truth, then my son is going to get his tongue cut off tomorrow. So before the next day, she rushes to the palace and meets up with King Vasu and urges him, pleads with him, and says, look, you owe me some Guru Dakshina. I am the wife of your Guru, and I'm asking you that when you have an audience with my son Parvat and Narad tomorrow, whatever they say, they are coming to get justice or a final version with you of what is the truth. Whatever they say, can you please ensure that you side with my son Vasu? Oh, sorry, with my son Parvat. And she pleads with King Vasu, and he agrees that don't worry, I owe you. And when your son and Narad Muni come, I will rule in favor of your son. And that happens. And the next day, as we heard in the story, both Vasu, both Parvat and Narad come to King Vasu and make him aware of their debate. And King Vasu wrongly says that I agree with Parvat. He is right. The word Aj is interpreted as meaning a bakro, meaning a goat, and that the particular teaching is to sacrifice a goat as a means of earning punya to go to a higher level or higher place. Now, because that is an obvious untruth, the devs who are around and watching this decide to punish Vasu first, because he was known as a very just king. Now, the story behind how that happened is something that I will also now talk about. So the other part of that story is that once near this kingdom, there was a hunter who was hunting in the forest with his bow and arrow, and he sights a deer a short distance away from where he is, and he puts an arrow to his bow and pulls it and releases it to try and kill this deer. But somehow the arrow hits something that appears to be invisible and stops short. It gets stuck in something hard. So this hunter is quite perplexed, and he goes to investigate what has actually happened. And he comes to a large rock which is completely transparent. It's sphatic-like quartz, which is not visible in certain lights, and it appears as if it is completely transparent. And the arrow has hit this particular rock, therefore it got stopped but you cannot see the rock from a distance because it is transparent. It is made of some crystalline material which is invisible in bright light. So he decides to take this rock and gift it to the king, and the king is very pleased with this, and he asks his courtiers and his engineers to fashion this rock into a particular platform on which his throne, his Sihansan would rest. So when people started coming to see him in the court, they would see his Sihansan or his throne floating in the air. And people then began to talk about the fact that Vasu was such a just king that his throne has now begun to float about in mid-air. And that is how he got reputed to being a great king who was very just. And he had this reputation which was known far and wide. But in this particular instance, when he sides with the untruth that his friend and fellow Sishya, fellow disciple Parvat is stating, the gods, the devs who are watching this decide to punish him, break his particular platform, which is invisible to other people, and the Sihansan, the throne falls down, and the devs are angry and they kill his other children as well. And the whole kingdom becomes quite disrupted. Parvat escapes with his life, but obviously he is disreputed. People realize that he was saying the untruth. But Parvat is very adamant that he wants to propagate what he has said, and what he has said is that to earn punya, you can sacrifice a bakro in a fire, and that is how you would do a yagna or a sacrificial fire and burn or kill people. Now, Parvat is sought out by one particular dev, is called Mahakal, and Mahakal seeks Parvat out because he is looking for somebody to propagate and his untruths, and he wants to take revenge on a king called Sagar, and he devises a whole scheme with the help of Parvat and with the help of a third person called Piplad, and the three of them together devise a scheme whereby the practice of sacrificing animals in fire as a means of achieving good punya and going to Swarg, to heaven, was begun and propagated. This particular Dev called Mahakal uses his powers to convince people that when they actually do that, when they sacrifice an animal in a fire, then they are acquiring good karmas. He's creating a false impression and a false depiction of what happens to that person with the powers that he has as a Dev, and he starts a whole movement where animal sacrifices gradually become the norm, and people begin to very strongly believe that that is something that religion has preached. And it started as a result of an untruth and somebody holding on to their particular version, even though it was well known that this was untrue, and that carried on. And to this day, we have animal sacrifice, which was quite prevalent in India in a lot of different places, and that practice has stopped long time ago, but not too far in the past. That was not unknown in some circles. And a lot of those practices, and I presume that a lot of those practices throughout the world actually came from this particular view that that was a good thing to do. So how did animal sacrifice became incorporated into religious practice in certain religions is what this story is about. And what we will do next time, I want to leave some time for questions and answers. What we'll do next time is give you a bit more detail about who this Mahakal was and who Piplad was and what they actually did. There is a longer version of this story in the Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra, the version that deals with the Jain Ramayana. And I will go through, I'll revise that and go through that as well. Because I think this is quite interesting and important, and to understand that how things get propagated when there are elements which are bent on propagating bad practice. And this is what happened in this particular instance. It's quite a well-known story. This happened, I think, around the time of the Ramayana, so quite a long time ago. But animal sacrifice became an established practice in a lot of religions. So I will end the story at this point, and we'll carry on with the other two aspects of this story about Mahakal and Piplad and how everything ties up in this story next time. Please feel free to watch this video again that's meant for children. There is also, if you watch the YouTube, I think there is a text version of the Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra on the internet that relates to this particular story, which those of you who read Gujarati may be able to read as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop here now and open up the floor for any questions.
Ajit Bhai, I've received a question. As part of the Jain diet, why is soot or ginger powder allowed, but ginger isn't?
Okay. Not related to this part, but the point is that raw ginger is alive, and it is a bhaksha because it does contain it is like potatoes, it is anantkai. The powder has been processed and dried out, and the powder itself at that point is not sachit, meaning it does not have any life in it, and it is therefore allowed. But all those things are used in very small quantities. That is why there is a a freedom on that, but it does not necessarily mean that this is completely without any dosh, but one does sort of balance out uh, the principle in the sense that this is not actual Anantkai which is alive at the moment. So, for example, when you are preparing any meal with potatoes or gajar or any kandamud, then you are going to be using them, whereas soot is usually used in very small quantities, and the ginger has been dried out completely. When it becomes achit, then it is powdered, and that is what is being used. So there is that element that everything that we have. So for example, the same thing applies to any grains or any vegetables. When we prepare them, we are obviously the life that is in those vegetables and in those grains are being destroyed. But once those lives have been destroyed, then they are achit, meaning nothing else is developing within them within that certain time. So even say kathor, if it becomes old or a few days old, then new life develops within that, and that is forbidden. So there are lots of rules about that. Same thing with boiled water. There is a certain time within which that boiled water remains achit, meaning without life, and you have to sort of use it, drink it within that time, and beyond that time, that water does not remain achit, and it would be that would be forbidden. Again, the difference between ordinary vegetables and anantkai like potatoes and gajar and ginger and all those are that every smallest part of that particular vegetable contains an infinite number of life forms. So those are anantkai, and that is why there is a lot of hinsa in using those and eating those. That is the reason as far as I am aware. But if somebody knows something slightly different, please let me know.
Thank you, Ajit Bhai. I don't have any further questions sent to me.
Okay. Ajit Bhai, I have a couple of questions for you. Just on reflection, when Rajiv Bhai was doing his jatra talk with us, he did mention that he went to one of the Kali temples and he found that they do animal sacrifice there, and he decided that he was not going to go visit that temple because of the animal sacrifice. And I think that is our position as Jains. Is that not that if they are conducting animal sacrifice, we do not visit those places?
Yeah. And that practice is not completely stopped. So there are some places where that is prevalent among Hindus. I mean, we all know about the sacrifice of goats during the Bakri Eid and what the Muslim community does. We are all aware of that. But among the Hindus, animal sacrifices became something that was being used around as a result of this particular incident, which was spread over a long period of time by these three people, and one of whom was a nasty Dev who had powers, and the others were his agents who were propagating this. The Parvat, the teacher's son, and this other person, Piplad, who had his own other agenda, and this Dev, who had his agenda in trying to get one of his old enemies that he had from a previous life into real trouble and ensure that his future lives were completely messed up, that he decides to conduct this particular conspiracy that did result in this kind of behavior, which we are seeing many, many thousands of years later, even now. It is much less than it used to be, but animal sacrifice hasn't completely stopped even among the Hindu community.
I have a question from Sarita Ben. From the story that you have narrated, did Narad's tongue get cut off because that was the that did not happen, did it?
Before, I mean, the very moment that Vasu supported the untruth that Parvat was proposing, and he said, yes, Parvat, you are right, and Narad is wrong. The Devs who were watching decided that this king did not deserve his reputation and he did not deserve to live. So they punished him. They broke his Shila on which his throne was resting, the invisible Shila. His throne got thrown down. They ensured that he did not survive. And they were upset and angry, and they were making a point that this whole incident was what Vasu was supporting. The statement that Parvat was making were both wrong. So they were making a point that the word Aj does not translate as a bakro, and animal sacrifice is not religious practice. Animal sacrifice, which is hinsak, which is violent, cannot be the right thing to do in the name of religion, because religion is about compassion to all life. So all those points were being made in this action that the Devs were taking, and it was something that they considered appropriate, but unfortunately, they obviously were not in a position or were not vigilant enough to stop this other Dev who started a whole conspiracy and created different scenarios over a long period of time, when this practice then became very much established because people saw miracles happening as a result of animal sacrifice. And this Dev was just using his powers to create scenes which made simple people think that something miraculous was happening. In fact, that was all a show that he was doing. So he was basically acting like a magician, saying, if you do this, you get this reward. And this is, I'm showing you that this is what is happening. But his whole agenda was to try and seek revenge from another king. And he ultimately does that. And how he does that, we'll talk about that in the next, in the lesson next week.
Okay. Similarly, Sarita Ben's question carries on. In today's time, how does one get punishment for any wrongdoing? Is it like, do we just say karma or?
Yeah, I mean, this were sort of incidents in a time where Devs were vigilant, and these were kings with huge reputations, with I mean, these days, most of the things that we do are minuscule. Most of the sins that we commit are not of great interest or importance to a lot of people. They do not have major significance. So we accumulate bad karmas, and obviously they will come to fruition. But even now, if there are major bad karmas that are acquired, or even major good karmas that are acquired, then they can come to fruition in a short time within this lifetime as well. That can happen, but it depends on the power of what we are trying to do and how big it is. So it is not impossible that one may uh, suffer the consequence or reap the benefits of, suffer the consequences of a pap karma, or reap the benefits of a punya karma within this lifetime. It's not impossible, but doesn't often happen.
One more question. Do in Jainism do we have like in Hinduism we have Havan. In Jainism, do we have that practice as well?
No. So if you look at what we do in our pujas, the fruit and the akshat and everything is just given. It is laid there. It is not sacrificed. We are well aware, and even say in using things like flowers in puja, there is a balance between the value of the act itself in promoting the person's spiritual level, and getting to a stage where spiritually there is a very great benefit, and balancing that with the harm to the life of a flower. So for example, there are people who argue that why should we use a live flower in a puja? But there is a balance, and there is a way in which a flower has to be plucked. So anybody who takes flowers for a puja, there are certain rules as to how that is done, to ensure that you are doing the minimum harm to the flower. You only pluck the mature flowers. You also ensure that any insects that may be lying around, that you are kind and careful in the way you actually pluck, and you use and you do it in a very disciplined and a non-violent way as much as possible. So in none of our practices, in none of our pujas, the principles of ahimsa are ignored. They are incorporated in every part. So if you look at um, the details on the rituals, and Jayesh Bhai has covered this previously as the 10 trick of puja and darshan, as to how we do Dev darshan, and all the things that are associated with Dev darshan and pujan that we do on a daily basis, and the big pujans that is well described in the text called Shraddha Vidhi. So anybody who's interested, there are many versions of this particular text that are available in Gujarati. I'm not aware if there is any English translation on this, but Shraddha Vidhi is a very well-known text which describes a lot of things um, related to puja and other things.
Okay. That was all the questions I had. If anybody does have questions, please do feel free to forward them to Mira and myself. But otherwise, Ajit Bhai, at the moment, I don't have any further questions.
There's one question that I mentioned last time that I don't actually, that somebody had sent over while I was away. Do they want to maybe repeat it? That sent it to me by email if that person is in the class. Do you want to maybe tell us your question? We got a bit of time, can answer that.
Ajit Bhai, while we're waiting for that person to send it to us, Darshana sent us a question. If our teachings say we should do tap, such as fasting, to go to moksha, how come all the nutritional foods have been invented and are good for us?
Sorry, if your teaching say that we should do tap, how come
all the nutritional food that have been invented are good for us? So I think she's trying to say is this food that we are eating is good for us, so why should we be doing tap to go to moksha?
Okay. So nutritional foods that are good for the body. You see, moksha is about the emancipation of the soul. What the religion focuses on the progress and the ultimate welfare of the soul. The body is not actually the focus. However, it is a fact that any spiritual undertaking cannot ultimately harm the body. Meaning that if the rules of a tap are actually followed, then generally people will not suffer as a result of that. However, in certain instances, as a result of some bad karmas in the past, people may suffer. And also if certain, obviously foods that we eat may have some negative influence if we lack in certain nutritional elements. But if you look at how different people actually tolerate different levels of fasting and different levels of restriction in their diet, it's actually quite surprising to those of you who've been observing, and for me in particular as a doctor, the variation in how different interventions actually affect different people and how individuals' bodies respond. One has to understand, and I've come to the conclusion that there are a lot more elements to good health than what we know about, and also what allopathic medicine actually propagates. So I don't know if some of you have watched a documentary called Heal on Netflix, which was around maybe a couple of years ago, which I think is no longer there, but it brings together quite a few prominent physicians, including Deepak Chopra and a few others. So talking about the power of the mind in healing the body. And it gives very good examples of people with major problems where the healing process happened as a result of nothing except a positive attitude and a structured way of intervention, which was not physical. And when you're talking about food as being important and essential, there is a very wide variation as to what we preach or what we propagate in terms of the, say, for example, the 5 a day, the fruit, the importance of reducing your salt intake, the importance of, say, vitamin D, the importance of the problems that can occur as a result of B12. All those things are true, but then we also have people who fast for 8 days. We see that quite often every year. but people who are fasting for much more than that. There are lots of people who do complete fast over a period of a month. And we know of one monk who has been doing 6 months fast or several uh, periods of time, or for many years he's been doing 6 months fast, and then he starts another 6 months fast. I think he's currently again on another 6 month fast. So there are lots of variations. So ultimately, what is religion does not preach anything that would be harmful. There are rules uh, in terms of what is allowed and what is not. But if you follow a Jain diet, which includes the food that we eat in Ambil, it's actually a very healthy diet. And if you look at some of the things that Jainism has been prescribing for a long time is not to eat after sunset, that in itself is a very accepted practice now. But if we had talked about this as being healthy 5-10 years ago, people would have laughed at us and said, look, there is no evidence for that. Now the evidence is there. You say that if you keep your stomach empty for 12, 14, 16 hours a day, then that is actually very good for your health. It improves your body's metabolism. It reduces, it improves the control of your diabetes if you have that. And it has benefits in many different aspects. So there are lots of things that we still do not understand. And you need to also remember that Jainism is a religion that is propagated by Tirthankars who are Keval Gnani, who knew everything. So, and some of those things we have to accept on faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit Bhai. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, so we'll end the session today, and we'll carry on with this other aspects of this story about Parvat, Vasu, and Narad next week. 1 second. If there's anything that I've said which is against the teachings of Jainism, of the Aryan Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. Manushan Kayati Nichami the Kudam. Sarvamangala Mangalyam, Sarvakalyana Karanam, Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam, Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you all again next Tuesday.